It's a pity we never used the eyebrows more on him. They were little levers as eyebrows. They should have been flipping up and down, doing something. True Heart's over there on the left. True Heart had cut his hair. When he joined the series, he cut his hair off on the side, so he sort of had a big bushy mohawk. And I think he dyed it bright blonde or platinum or something like that. Very unique look. It's a pity he never kept it. He just let it grow back in. Chris Graham always loved dealing with Gurr. And I think Chris Graham came up with all these jokes. Originally, it just said that this was supposed to be this... In the script, it said this is just a major action sequence. It didn't describe anything. It just said, something that would make Kyle Menke sweat. And so Chris Graham gets this as the second action guy in the first 6 episodes. And this is what he had to come up with. And he just took off, and he did it with zest. And in the end, it was really well done. I think it's one of the better action sequences in the series, in fact. And just fun as hell, because you have Zim and Gurr playing off of each other. And I think that really helps make it. He puts in a cameo of me saving this baby. He said, that's one thing I would never do is save anybody's life. He always thought of me as this godless heathen or something like that. Couldn't be more wrong. I think that was his own personality. Originally, Zim belted her. Zim balled up his hand into a fist and slugged her off. We had to change that into a slap for Nickelodeon. Some of the most difficult stuff here, well animated by Mr. Hahn. But Chris had figured out every frame of this animation, it seemed like, or every major frame. See, now I look at it, it actually could be a little bit more snappy here and there. You actually see where we ran off the edge of the animation paper in the one down shot of the street. You'll see a little white triangle come in on the upper corner. I always wanted that to be a piece of promo art, just the two of them riding the pig. I thought that would be a great piece just for the series. Just them on a pig in a sky. Nickelodeon would never go for it. They said it didn't center on the characters enough. But I thought it was such an odd thing that it would really just perplex people. They'd be like, what is this? There's a giant pig with these two guys riding it. Very reminiscent of Pink Floyd's old album, The Animals. The Wettening. This is another Ron Brewer board. Ron Brewer and Kyle Menke. And had one of our worst animation and layout crews overseas on this. It was a Roman Dirge idea, and I remember Roman writing the script. He had never written a script before, and he was very frightened. He's very insecure about it, and Jonan and Rob were running around. They knew that he was blowing it, but nobody wanted to tell Roman that it really wasn't working out. And I remember going into his office once. He asked me, what to do about it. I couldn't tell him, quite frankly. He's in the middle of writing this script. He had to wait for the whole thing to be done. I think he just wrote a really horrible first treatment, and then they basically gave it over to Rob. Roman came up with great ideas, though. Where he might not have been able to write a script, he could come up with great ideas. He came up with just really nice ideas. I think Walk of Doom was his. Possibly Parent-Teacher Night, The Wettening, Zit Boy. What else was his? I think Chickenfoot was his, which I think was one of his weaker ideas. And then Mega Doomer, another great idea by him. And he left to do his own cartoon, Lenore, down at Sony, and it was going to be turned into a full motion picture. I don't think it ever was. Maybe it will in the future, but he was down there working on that. And he was supposed to come back into the second season or just work from home and give us premises and maybe outlines. And, Roman had the basic ideas down. He knew what he wanted to do, and they were really strong. It was just when it came to finally writing the actual script, he just didn't have the skills or his head in the right place at this point. I think it was something he could have learned. He just needed time and needed to work at it. This show got us heavily criticized from everybody, pretty much. Because in this episode, Zim gets wet. And he's frying. He just can't stand the water. But yet, people were losing their minds because in the previous episode, he just turned around through that pond or that lake, on the pig, and he was fine. We sort of wrote it off as and made excuses for it, although it was just an idea to suit this story, and it wasn't supposed to go beyond this. which, might have been a little bit cheap in the character development department over the long term. But we just wrote it off that Zim basically found out he can't stand water, and now he just coats himself in paste every day and goes out, totally covered in paste. I think that's a good enough thing to assume. He found a solution to his problem. Now he does it all the time. It would have been nice if in a few episodes we just showed him covering himself with paste here and there, before he went out. Just a really quick scene while he's talking to Gur, and then he's out, and you understand what's going on if you've seen these earlier episodes. This whole idea of, progressive showdown was great, I think it's a very fun way to structure a show. I think Roman had the right idea when he was writing this, Everything progresses, everything goes on. Now, I don't know if these calendars make sense anymore, but it's supposed to be every day you would see something happening. And the show is very long. We had to cut out a large amount of this storyboard to make the show the right length for shipping, and then final broadcast. But basically, it's all there. It all escalates. One character does one thing, the other does another, and they keep playing off of each other. And it was good to see too that Dib, could get to Zim occasionally with certain things. That sort of ability to play off of each other. Zim having fear of the world diminished and went away after, episode 7 or so. Zim then became much more self-assured, and I think he sort of lost that innocence and charm of the fish out of water. Zim felt very familiar with the Earth after that, but yet still couldn't carry out his plan. This again was a large show to handle design-wise and boarding-wise. A lot of BGs, and at this point we were still designing the cities and the people. So we're sort of making the show up as we go along at this point. It's also kind of silly that Dib's that afraid of water, but it's sort of played. It's nobody really gets to likes to get splashed by water, but here you have Dib being afraid of just getting splashed by water, and you have Zim basically in agony being splashed by water. These montages, stuff like this, just ate up a lot of time in design. The fine thing though was that after we had done them, we could use those backgrounds again and again for other little things. Never understood what that was supposed to be. I think that thing's tongue is in Dib's ear. In that drawing that Gaz did. When I set up the show, I talked to some of the Futurama guys in their 3D department to understand how they did 3D integrated into 2D, and they watched from a distance, not sure what we're doing. And when they saw this show televised, The Wettening, with this 3D end with the big balloon coming down to Earth, they just lost their minds. They thought it was the most brilliant thing ever done. I just think the visuals, 2D surrounding it, just aren't that great. Probably some of the worst animation and worst layout done in the whole series. And, the board artists were still trying to learn the style of the show. I had asked specifically overseas that they get a different animation crew, because I knew that this animation crew stank that was on this episode. I asked for a new animation crew, a better animation crew, just to handle the end of this show right here. And our overseas supervisor, Derek Eversfield, was able to make that happen. He found another crew, and he did it. And it turned out a little bit better. You can tell the whole style of sort of the drawing and everything changes. Some of that's Kyle Menke's board, as Kyle does this giant action sequence, but a lot of it was the overseas animation department changing.